किसी व्यक्ति के निर्माण का स्वर्णिम समय यौवन काल होता है, जिसमें वह आने वाले लंबे जीवन के लिए शरीर, मन और आत्मा का निर्माण और विकास करता है। इसी नींव पर अपने जीवन का मजबूत भवन खड़ा करता है और उसका भोग करता है। किसी भी राष्ट्र के विकास की आधारशिला और ऊर्जा उसकी युवा शक्ति ही होती है। यही उसका आत्मबल और इच्छा शक्ति भी होती है। इसीलिए कहा गया है, वीर भोग्य वसुंधरा। राष्ट्र निर्माण के ताने बाने में यौवन के ही धागे होते हैं। अतः जो राष्ट्र अपनी इस ऊर्जा का संरक्षण और संवर्धन करता है, वह विकास के उच्च शिखर पर पहुंचता है। राष्ट्र के कृषि, उद्योग, शिक्षा, चिकित्सा, तकनीक, राजनीति रूपी चक्के को यही युवा शक्ति, ऊर्जा व गति प्रदान करती है। यह राष्ट्र की रगों में बहने वाला गर्म खून है, जो उसे चैतन्य और प्रगतिशील बनाता है। भौतिक व आध्यात्मिक दोनों के विकास में इसी ऊष्मा का तप सक्रिय रहता है। इतिहास साक्षी रहा है कि जब किसी राष्ट्र की धुरी लड़खड़ाई है, युवा शक्ति ने आगे आकर अपने पुरुषार्थ से उसे सुदृढ़ बनाया है। आज अनेक प्रकार की समस्याएं जैसे नशा, फैशन परस्ती, पाश्चात्य जीवन शैली, आस्था संकट, भ्रष्टाचार, बेरोजगारी देश की युवा शक्ति पर आरूढ़ हैं। आज युवा शक्ति को आत्मबोध एवं अपने सांस्कृतिक गौरव से परिचित कराना समय की मांग है। वर्ष 2011 की जनगणना के अनुसार हमारे देश में 35 वर्ष तक की उम्र की 65% आबादी है। यह युवा शक्ति जिधर चल पड़ेगी, देश भी उधर ही चल पड़ेगा। अतः देश का भविष्य अब युवाओं के हाथ में है। यह युवा शक्ति ही राष्ट्र शक्ति बनकर राष्ट्र को समृद्धि, उन्नति एवं प्रगति के मार्ग पर ले जाएगी। युग ऋषि पंडित श्रीराम शर्मा आचार्य जी ने युवा की अद्भुत परिभाषा दी है। युवा वो है असंभव जिसके शब्दकोश में नहीं, जो बाधाओं को चीरकर अपना मार्ग बनाता है, जो परिस्थितियों का दास नहीं, उनका निर्माता, नियंत्रणकर्ता एवं स्वामी है, जो भाग्य नहीं, अपने कर्म पर विश्वास रखता है, जो उमंग, उत्साह, जोश से जीता व सुनहरे भविष्य के सपने देखता है, जो स्वयं सब कुछ करके गौरव अनुभव करता है और विश्व में कुछ अनूठा करना चाहता है।
असमंजस व अवसाद की स्थिति से गुजर रही युवा पीढ़ी को दिशा देने का काम एक चिंतक ही कर सकता है।
नमस्कार।
वर्ष 2006 में देव संस्कृति विश्वविद्यालय के दीक्षांत समारोह में पूर्व राष्ट्रपति डॉक्टर ए.पी.जे. अब्दुल कलाम व श्रद्धेय डॉक्टर प्रणव पंड्या जी, जो विश्वविद्यालय के कुलपति भी हैं, मिले और इन दोनों चिंतकों ने मंथन किया कि युवा पीढ़ी को एक सृजनात्मक मंच देने की आवश्यकता है जो राष्ट्र निर्माण में सहायक हो। यहीं से दिया की नींव रखी गई।
I am indeed delighted to participate in the second convocation of Dev Sanskriti Vishwavidyalaya. I am very happy that this institution has been created with a motto of developing the divine culture, which is of utmost importance to us while we are on the path of transforming India into a prosperous, happy and peaceful society. We have the responsibility of transforming India into a developed nation before the year 2020. It is an endless journey through knowledge and enlightenment. Such a journey opens up new vistas of development or humanism, where there is no scope nor room for pettiness, disharmony, jealousy and hatred or enmity. It transforms a human being into a wholesome whole, a noble soul and an asset to the universe. God bless you.
जिस तरह एक दिया अंधकार को दूर करने की क्षमता रखता है, दिया भी इस देश के युवा मन से अंधेरे को दूर करने का स्वप्न लेकर चला है। ये प्रशिक्षण और कार्यशालाओं के माध्यम से शिक्षित, स्वस्थ, आत्मनिर्भर, विनम्र, संवेदनशील दिव्य युवाओं को तैयार करने के लिए प्रयासरत है, जिससे राष्ट्र निर्माण की रचनात्मक गतिविधियां चलाई जा सकें, दिव्य भारत का पुनर्निर्माण हो। इसका लक्ष्य युवाओं की क्षमताओं का विकास कर दिव्य भारत का निर्माण करना है, जिसमें व्यक्ति, परिवार व समाज का उत्थान हो। दिया युवाओं के सपनों में आदर्शवाद लाकर उनकी वैचारिक प्रक्रिया में सकारात्मक बदलाव लाने के लिए प्रयासरत है। वैज्ञानिक अध्यात्म के माध्यम से युवाओं में देवत्व की अभिव्यक्ति, दुनिया में सद्भाव के साथ सतयुग की वापसी इसका परम उद्देश्य है। इस तथ्य की महत्वता समझते हुए वो डॉक्टर कलाम के भारतवर्ष को वर्ष 2020 तक एक समृद्ध राष्ट्र बनाने के स्वप्न की ओर युवा शक्ति को अग्रसर करने के लिए दिया इस महान राष्ट्र के युवाओं के लिए एक आंदोलन है जो मजबूत सिद्धांतों और यथार्थवादी लक्ष्यों पर आधारित है। जो लोग दिल और दिमाग से युवा हैं एवं जो एक नए भारत की परिकल्पना के हमारे स्वप्न से सहमत हैं, उम्र, जाति या धर्म की परवाह किए बगैर हमसे जुड़ें।
मुझे विश्वास है गायत्री परिवार के दिया आंदोलन के माध्यम से देश के युवाओं में वो संवेदनाएं प्रकट होगी, सामाजिक जिम्मेवारियां प्रकट होगी, एक साहस की वृत्ति पैदा होगी, कुछ करने के लिए, कुछ कर करके दिखाने के लिए जीवन को लगाने की इच्छा होगी। देश के लिए जीना सीखो इस मंत्र के साथ
इस आंदोलन से जुड़कर आपके जीवन में खुशी एवं एक नए उत्साह का संचार होगा। साथ ही अपने राष्ट्र को नई ऊंचाइयों तक ले जाने में आप गौरवान्वित महसूस करेंगे।
नमस्कार, गुड इवनिंग, सभी को प्रणाम। दिया मुंबई की ज्ञान सभा में आप सभी का स्वागत है। वी वेलकम यू ऑल टू दिस सेशन ऑफ ज्ञान सभा। और जैसा इस एक छोटी सी डॉक्यूमेंट्री के माध्यम से हमने देखा कि दिया विभिन्न तरह की गतिविधियां करता है जो सोशली रेलेवेंट है और जो हमारा जो राष्ट्र है उसके निर्माण के प्रति ऐसी एक्टिविटीज़ जो हमारे देश को सुदृढ़ बना सकें, ऐसी एक्टिविटीज़ दिया के युवा कर रहे हैं। ये वो युवा हैं जो जीवन के विभिन्न आयामों से आते हैं, अलग अलग प्रोफेशन से आते हैं और एक प्लेटफॉर्म पे आकर के अपनी प्रतिभा का, अपने समय का एक अंश लगाते हैं, जिससे कि जो प्रबुद्ध वर्ग है उनमें युग ऋषि पंडित श्री राम शर्मा आचार्य जी जो फाउंडर हैं अखिल विश्व गायत्री परिवार के, उनके विचार पहुंच सकें। उनके विचार इतने व्यापक हैं, जीवन के हर आयाम पे उन्होंने लिखा है और बोला है, जिससे कि आज की सारी समस्याओं का समाधान शायद संभव है। और इसी को मद्देनजर रखते हुए इस प्लेटफॉर्म का गठन किया गया था, दिया ज्ञान सभा का जो प्लेटफॉर्म है। और आज एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण विषय पे बात करने के लिए हमारे साथ दो बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण व्यक्तित्व मौजूद हैं। हमारे साथ आज मौजूद हैं डॉक्टर सुमंगला कोटनिस बोरकर जी और डॉक्टर राजन मधुसूदन बोरकर जी, जो कि आज बात करने वाले हैं हमारे साथ द इंस्पायरिंग लेगेसी ऑफ डॉक्टर कोटनिस। बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण ये विषय है। डॉक्टर सुमंगला जी जो हैं वो लोकमान्य तिलक मेडिकल कॉलेज से एसोसिएटेड रही हैं। डॉक्टर राजन टोपीवाला नेशनल मेडिकल कॉलेज से एसोसिएटेड रहे हैं। बोथ आर रनिंग डॉक्टर कोटनिस मेमोरियल क्लिनिक फॉर मोर देन 40 years, managing cancer patients at a general practice level with specialization in chemotherapy. बहुत ही नेक कार्य है ये जो वो कर रहे हैं। गाइडेंस टू कार्डियक पेशेंट्स फॉर एंजियोप्लास्टी एंड बाईपास सर्जरी. Dr. Rajan also read paper at the annual conference of F.C.G.P on side effects and precautions of chemotherapy. कीमोथेरेपी पे आपने काफ़ी काम किया है और जो विषय है वो बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण विषय है। आज डॉक्टर द्वारकानाथ कोटनिस जी के बारे में बात करना, जो who was one of the 5 Indian physicians dispatched to China to provide medical assistance during the Second Sino-Japanese War in 1938. Was known for his dedication and perseverance. He has been regarded as an example for Sino-Indian friendship and collaboration. और बहुत ही छोटी आयु में उन्होंने बहुत कुछ अचीव कर लिया था और एक ऐसी लेगेसी वो छोड़ के गए जो आज हम सबको सीख लेने की उससे आवश्यकता है। वी ऑल नीड टू लर्न एंड टेक दैट लेगेसी फॉरवर्ड, और इसीलिए आज इस विषय पे हम बात करने वाले हैं। तो इस भूमिका के पीछे मेरा एक मोटिव यही था कि मैं बता सकूं कि बहुत सेंसिटिव टॉपिक है और इसीलिए आज के जो दो वक्ता हमारे हैं उनसे बेहतर इस पे बात करने के लिए कोई हो ही नहीं सकता है। तो बिना देर किए मैं दोनों को आमंत्रित करूंगा कि आप हमारे सभी श्रोताओं का मार्गदर्शन करें और इस महत्वपूर्ण विषय पे आप अपनी बात रखें। प्लीज वेलकम।
Good afternoon. We, the members of Kotnis family, are thankful for the opportunity of introducing Dr. D.S. Kotnis and his work to people of India. Though we have done the work, People still do not know so much about Dr. Kotnis. Dr. Kotnis is a great doctor and international spirit with international spirit who devoted his life to the cause of Chinese soldiers.
I am Dr. Sumangala Borkar, daughter of Mr. Mangesh Kotnis, elder brother of Dr. Dwarkanath Kotnis. I grew up listening to the stories of Dr. Kotnis, that is, I call him Baba Kaka, from my father and aunts. I have been doing family practice in Villeparle, East Mumbai, with my husband Dr. Rajan Borkar for last 44 years. Our clinic is named after Dr. Kotnis. Yes, our clinic is named after Dr. Kotnis, and we have his bust statue at the very entrance of our clinic. Dr. Kotnis was born in Sholapur on 10th October 1910. His birth date is 10-10-10. He was second amongst the 8 siblings. My father was the eldest. He had 2 brothers and 5 sisters. His mother Sita and father Shantaram were staying in the native place Vengurla in Sindhudurg. After marriage, Shantaram Kotnis migrated from Vengurla to Sholapur in search of a job. He accepted the job as a senior clerk in Lakshmi Vishnu Mills. Shantaram was fond of social work. He was elected as a councillor in Sholapur Municipal Corporation many times. He was also appointed as the chairman of Education Committee and deputy mayor at different times. Dwarkanath grew up in such an illustrious family. He completed his matriculation from Northcote High School, Sholapur, with good marks. Young Dwarkanath had patriotic spirit in him since childhood. He joined the non-cooperative movement started by Mahatma Gandhi and participated in Swadeshi movement with his father in school days. From there afterwards, he was wearing clothes made from Indian hand-woven cloth only. He then went to Deccan College in Pune for further education, and after inter-science, he joined G.S. Medical College, that is KM Hospital in Mumbai. Dr. Jivraj Mehta, who was then the Dean of G.S. Medical College, was imprisoned for participating in civil disobedience movement and was succeeded by Dr. Khanolkar. All the students were angry and protested by going on strike. They staged demonstrations and held public meetings. In one of these meetings, Dwarkanath criticized Dr. Khanolkar, which duly reached his ears. Dwarkanath was removed from GS Medical College and was transferred to Grand Medical College. After completing his M.B.B.S. from Grand Medical College in 1936, he wanted to go to England for FRCS. But as it was too expensive, he decided to do MS in Grand Medical College in Mumbai. The Second World War began around the time Dr. Kotnis passed his M.B.B.S. Japanese imperialists invaded China. China was a very backward country then. They did not have modern weaponry, no doctors, no medicines, no facilities of any kind. Poor soldiers succumbed to their injuries. Marshal Zhu, the chief of 8th Route Army, wrote a letter to Pandit Nehru asking for medical help. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru made an earnest request to Indian doctors to enroll themselves in the medical team to be sent to China in their hour of crisis. Dr. Dwarkanath Kotnis wrote a letter to Dr. Jivraj Mehta that he was willing to join the medical team going to China. Dr. Mehta warned him that the visit could also prove to be dangerous to him, but Dr. Kotnis was very firm on his decision. Dwarkanath then wrote a letter to his father asking for permission. He wrote to his father that this was a priceless and rare opportunity to live a distinctive life quite different from usual run-of-the-mill life. The first reaction of his father was to refuse him permission. But then he wrote a letter to his son saying, I personally admire your courage and valor. I respect your decision. I am very happy to tell you that even your mother is not behind in granting you permission for your decision. Dr. Kotnis went back to Sholapur to bid farewell to his parents and friends. The news that Dr. Kotnis had been selected as the youngest doctor in medical team going to China had spread like wildfire. Sholapur Medical Association organized big programs to felicitate Dr. Dwarkanath. There was a huge crowd of people to bid him farewell at the Sholapur railway station. Dr. Mohanlal Atal from Uttar Pradesh, a distant relative of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, was the leader of the team. The famous surgeon from Nagpur, Dr. M.R. Cholkar, was the deputy leader. The other two doctors, Dr. Vijay Kumar Basu and Dr. Deven Mukherjee, were from Calcutta. The Chinese embassy had organized great farewell in Hotel Taj in Mumbai. The Congress committee had arranged August gathering under the presidency of Sarojini Naidu in Jinnah Hall. The meeting was attended by many people of all castes and religion. Huge number of college students who belonged to Mumbai gave slogans in honor of Dwarkanath. The gigantic procession of mill workers came to the meeting during the dancing on the tune of Lejim and singing patriotic songs. In her rousing speech, Sarojini Naidu praised all the doctors in the team and expressed confidence that the doctors would not hesitate to sacrifice anything for the successful completion of the task they had undertaken. The next day, on 1st September 1938, the team left by the boat SS Rajputana. There was a huge crowd to bid them farewell. There were political leaders like Mrs. Sarojini Naidu, Mrs. Krishna Hati Singh, and large number of students. SS Rajputana reached Hong Kong after 15 days. The local people welcomed the team. Dr. Kotnis started learning Chinese language throughout the journey from the senior Chinese travelers, and by the time they reached Hong Kong, he had already begun to communicate in broken Chinese. Finally, they reached Canton. In Canton, they saw many houses that had been demolished in bomb attacks. They could hear the cries of people trapped in these houses. There was freezing cold and shortage of medicines. Shortly, they left Canton to go to Yichang. It was at Yichang that Dr. Kotnis received a letter from home, the first letter he got since his arrival in China. They left Yichang for Chungking, and the very next day, Yichang was bombed and completely destroyed. The medical team had a narrow escape. Chungking was the wartime capital of China. In Chungking, all the Indian doctors adopted Chinese names. Kotnis was called Khatiwa. The long-awaited ambulance and the truck loaded with medicines and equipments finally arrived in Chungking on 10th December 1939. The ambulance had Indian and Chinese national flags painted on both of its sides. On 20th December 1938, Mr. Shantaram Kotnis, father of Dwarkanath, passed away in Sholapur. The Kotnis family was absolutely devastated by his death. Elder brother Mangesh wrote a letter to Dr. Cholkar and requested him to break the news to Dwarkanath. Dwarkanath immediately wrote a letter to his brother which said,
This is a terrible news. Indeed, it was not very difficult for me to bear the sad news. Only yesterday this city was bombed. I saw bodies of women and innocent children being pulled out of the debris. What was their fault that they should meet this tragic death? Please do your best to console dear I, because that is her lot is saddest. Please assure her that there is someone thousands of miles away who, though cannot come by her side, is praying for her God that be. I am extremely sorry I cannot be of any help to you, Mangesh. It is really hard to be faced with the task of straightening financial matters with mental anguish. And I am sure you are quite confident up to it.
in January 39, the Indian team left Chungking for Yan'an. They were the first international team visiting this area and were welcomed with tremendous enthusiasm. Public meeting was organized to welcome the team, which had overwhelming majority of young people. Mao Zedong and other leaders were personally present to welcome the team. While in Yan'an, Indian team had several opportunities to meet the renowned leaders like Mao Zedong, Zhou Enlai, Marshal Zhu. The team was assigned the responsibilities of a hospital which was 15 miles away from Yan'an. There were hardly any roads to reach the hospital. Doctors had to travel on donkeys and horses or mules. Dr. Kotnis turned out to be the excellent rider. Dr. Kotnis was given the responsibility of developing X-ray and surgical section. Dr. Tolkar and Dr. Mukherjee returned to India because of their ill health. The three doctors received a telegram from Marshal Zhu requesting them to go to Southeast Sanchi as their services were highly needed in that area. The three doctors welcomed this proposal happily. Now they were going to experience the actual war in the company of young guerrilla soldiers. Dr. Atal, Dr. Basu and Dr. Kotnis left Yan'an in November 39 to reach the main center of Marshal Zhu in the region of Southeast Sanchi. They had to face many problems on the way: shortage of petrol, bad hilly roads, extremely cold climate. Sometimes they traveled by bus or sometimes by train. Sometimes they were even forced to walk with their luggage on their backs. At times, they used to ride on mules. They were accompanied by Chinese soldiers and had to be very cautious, especially when they traveled to the region occupied by Japanese army. They had to cover a distance of 25 to 30 miles on foot per day. Finally, after walking in this way for 3 weeks, the Indian doctors reached the main center where Marshal Zhu was located. The Indian medical team immediately started their work on reaching their destination. The various sections of the hospital were distributed all over the village in the farmers' houses and were far away from the actual war place. The wounded soldiers required at least 2 days to reach the hospital. By the time they reached the hospital, their wounds either worsened or some of them even died on the way. Dr. Basu and Dr. Kotnis asked for permission to go to the actual war zone in order to provide medical care to the wounded soldiers right on the spot. This was the bold proposal. The officers of the 8th Route Army welcomed it enthusiastically. In the meantime, Dr. Atal was infected with some skin disease which could not get cured, and he returned to India. Dr. Basu and Dr. Kotnis had learned the Chinese language very well and could speak and write with equal felicity. After having worked on war front together for some time, both decided to work independently with two separate batches of soldiers. The battle of soldiers with whom Dr. Kotnis had gone continued for 13 days. Dr. Kotnis worked day and night without rest and treated 800 wounded soldiers. General Nehrunchen was the chief of the 8th Route Army Division of Soldiers with whom Dr. Kotnis was working. He was very much impressed by the day and night work Dr. Kotnis was doing. Dr. Bethune, a Canadian doctor, had established a hospital in this area. Dr. Bethune was very happy to know that the Indian team is coming to work there. But unfortunately, Dr. Bethune got injury on his finger. As there was shortage of gloves, he operated on other patients without gloves. His finger got infected, swollen, and Dr. Bethune passed away due to gangrene causing septicemia before the Indian team reached there. The hospital was now in very bad shape. The medical school required doctors with the war experience to teach and train the medical students. Next slide. Dr. Kotnis was the most ideal person for this work. Dr. Kotnis agreed to take up the challenge and assume the responsibilities offered to him. General Nehrunchen suggested that Dr. Basu should go to Yan'an to take care of the work there. The two friends, Basu and Kotnis, parted with heavy hearts. Next slide. Before leaving, Basu promised Kotnis that he would wait for him to return to Yan'an and would not leave for India without him. The model hospital Dr. Bethune had started was now taken over by Dr. Kotnis. It was now renamed as International Peace Hospital. Dr. Kotnis was appointed as the first director of the hospital. As a mark of tribute to Dr. Bethune, Dr. Kotnis laid a bouquet of flowers on his tomb and started his work. In older times, the patients were kept in close proximity where their beds joined together. Dr. Kotnis thought this to be unhygienic. He constructed separate kongs, that is platform made of bricks, for the patients and at a distance from each other. Because of the space between the two kongs now, the nurses found it easier to do their work. Operation theatre was constructed. He performed many operations. Some were very complicated and difficult. Once he also managed to remove a bullet from a villager's skull after a long and complicated surgery and saved his life. Dr. Kotnis was also assigned with the task of giving medical training to the trainee doctors in the institute. Besides, there were a huge number of dental patients who needed dental surgery. Dr. Kotnis had known a dentist, Dr. Li Tai Chi, when he was working in North China. He invited Dr. Lee Techi as the chief of the hospital. Dr. Lee Techi's wife was a nurse, and she was the great friend of Ko Ching Lan, who was the chief of the nursing section. Ko Ching Lan was impressed by Dr. Kotnis's work and his speech. Dr. Lee Techi, the dentist, his wife, Dr. Kotnis, and Ko Ching Lan became close friends. Ko Ching Lan often assisted Dr. Kotnis in his work. She had come to know Dr. Kotnis and his nature very well. She would understand anything he needed the most without his telling her. Both realized that they had fallen in love with each other. They decided to get married, and on 25th November 1941, the marriage ceremony took place. All the staff members of the hospital, medical staff, school, villagers, colleagues participated enthusiastically in the marriage celebrations. They hardly had any time to rest and got even more busy in their work after marriage. Dr. Kotnis was writing a book on surgery in Chinese language for students. He continued this task, and when he got time, he was also studying politics and always carried a book of political science. Referring to the great change in his political thinking, he wrote to Dr. Basu, who was in Yan'an. I am experiencing a good deal of transformation in my character and ideas. I therefore consider 1941 as one of the most important years of my life. Mrs. Ko Ching Lan has mentioned in her diary, Dwarkanath is constantly busy all the time. After morning exercise and breakfast, he studies political science and Chinese language. Then for 2 to 3 hours, he teaches the students. Then he would go to the medical round in the hospital. He would talk with the patients with great affection and empathy. Sometimes he offered his share of food to the patient who needed it. People started calling him Black Mother because of his complexion. In the afternoon, he would be busy operating on patients with his students. He was very particular that the instruments used for operation were sterilized properly. Later in the afternoon, he never slept but continued working on his book on surgery. Ko Ching Lan became pregnant. Dr. Kotnis was worried and shifted her to the safe place away from the war front for a few months. On 23rd August 1942, Ko Ching Lan gave birth to a cute baby boy. They named him Inghua. Ing in Chinese meant India, and Hua meant either flower or China. So the child was flower of India and China. The child had white complexion, but his features were Indian. Now Dr. Kotnis started thinking of returning to India. The very thought how his entire family would be rejoiced to see his wife and new baby made him so happy. But alas, his health started deteriorating. He started getting fits. When he felt that he was going to get a fit, he would go away to some secluded place so as not to let the others know about it. In December 1942, his fits increased. He was made to undergo compulsory rest. On the night of 8th December, he suffered from continuous fits. All the attempts to revive him failed, and on the early morning of 9th December at 6:15 a.m., he breathed his last. He died in the same International Peace Hospital of which he was the director. Thus, his life of 4 years in China came to an end in the most tragic circumstances. The news of death plunged all the colleagues, students, soldiers, army officers, and entire people of North China into the sea of grief. The 8th Route Army performed his last rites with full army honor, and he was buried under the specially constructed tomb in Tangshan County in Hebei Province in Heroes Graveyard. The mortal remains of Dr. Kotnis were later ceremonially removed from the original burial place to the Revolutionary Heroes Cemetery at Sichuan in North China to be laid to rest in special enclosure with those of Norman Bethune. Memorial meetings were held everywhere to mourn his loss. Comrade Mao Zedong sent a condolence letter to our family in his own handwriting, which is sent to us with the delegation after the end of the war. Letter says,
During the most difficult days of the anti-Japanese war, when he was badly in need of medical staff and facilities, Dr. Kotnis came to our country, all the way from India, and did great humanitarian work for our people with high devotion to duty and overcoming all hardships. He cured the wounded and saved many of the comrades from death. He will live forever in the hearts of revolutionary Chinese people.
all the Chinese delegates and ministers who visited us took pride in taking photographs with it. They even gave it a special treatment so that it should last longer. Our family in Sholapur received a letter from China in 1943. The very first letter after a gap of more than 1 year, as there was no communication between the two countries because of war. Everyone was excited. Younger sisters started dancing. My father was in the office. My uncle opened the letter and was shocked to read, expressed deep condolences to the family of Dr. Kotnis on the loss of our fallen hero in the battle against fascism. It was the worst piece of news that the family had received. Yet there was a small mention in it which brought some relief to the minds of the family members. Dwarkanath had got married in China and had left a 4-month-old infant son behind. Marshal Zhu assured Kotnis family by writing a letter that the wife and son of late international friend Dr. Kotnis, are very dear to our hearts, and they will be taken care of as best as humanly possible. Marshal Zhu decided to send Coaching Lan and Baby Ingwa to Yan'an for greater safety and settled life. The mother and the child traveled from Kokung village to Yan'an disguised as ordinary peasants to avoid being recognized by enemy agents. They had to suffer untold hardships. They had to cross mountains, valleys, and turbulent rivers. As no milk was available on the way, the baby was fed with the rice soup, which would upset his stomach. Finally, they reached Yan'an safely. Around 1945, Kotnis family shifted from Sholapur to Mumbai. Same year, Dr. Kotnis ki Amar Kahani, a Hindi movie directed by V. Shantaram, based on the book One Did Not Come Back, was released. V. Shantaram himself played the role of Dr. Kotnis and his wife Jayashree played Coaching Lan. Their daughter Rajashri, who was a baby that time, played the role of baby Ingwa. Mrs. Coaching Lan, during her visit to India, saw the movie. And afterwards, every time she visited India, she always went to meet Jayashree at her residence and appreciated her work. In 1957, my father got a letter from the President of China inviting him to visit China with the four surviving members of the medical mission. My father accepted the invitation and on 19 September 1957 boarded the plane to China. In China, he met Mrs. Ko Ching Lan, the woman who had won the love and admiration of Dwarkanath, and Ingwa, a 15-year-old boy who looked very much like his father, as if a school-going Dwarkanath had suddenly appeared before him. The boy gave a broad smile which made dimples appear on his cheeks, exactly as they did on Dwarkanath's in his young age. On the eve of Chinese Republic Day, there was a grand reception held in the People's Hall in Beijing. Premier Zhou Enlai, Chairman Mao Zedong, and other Chinese leaders were present at the reception. My father requested them to send Ko Ching Lan and Ingwa to India to meet the family, especially the mother of Dr. Kotnis. The leaders agreed, and the very next year they both visited India during Ingwa's school vacation. Everyone in the family got ready to go to the airport to receive them with mixed feelings. Sorrow at the thought of Dwarkanath, joy at the fulfillment of the desire to meet his wife and son, and anxiety to how they would like to stay with the family with the barrier of language. On 23rd August, we celebrated Ingwar's 16th birthday in traditional Indian fashion in the presence of all our relatives and friends. Fortnight appeared as short as a day. Time came for them to leave. Both Ko Ching Lan and Ingwa had become very close to us, as if we knew them for years. Even the barrier of language was overcome by broken English, or very often by gestures and movements of hands. Such conversation used to amuse us all. After going back, Ingwa used to write letters about his school and studies and anxiously inquired about his grandmother and other relatives. Unfortunately, the communications were disrupted again with the border dispute and India-China war. Dr. Basu visited China after the war in 1973 and sent us the heartbreaking news that Ingwa was no more. He had passed away due to some infection causing septicemia in 1967. This was another severe blow of destiny. The Chinese people have always shown their love and respect for Dr. Kotnis till today. Any delegation from China or ambassador or consul general who visits India always visits our residence and shows respect to the family. Even the president or prime minister visits India, he sends invitation to the family members of Dr. Kotnis and calls them in some five-star hotel and spends time with them in their busy schedule. The Chinese people have always shown their love and respect. In 2014, Prime Minister Xi Jinping visited India. He invited Manorama Kotnis, sister of Dr. Kotnis, along with other family members to New Delhi to meet him and spend time with them. On behalf of Chinese government, he conferred the Certificate of Friendship Award to Kotnis family. He also invited Manorama Kotnis, who was 93-year-old, to China to visit the tomb of Dr. Kotnis as per her wish. The Chinese government fulfilled her wish by giving her all the comforts in the journey and stay, so that she could visit the memorial hall and tomb of Dr. Kotnis. China invites the family members of Dr. Kotnis regularly for different functions they arrange. On 9th December 1976, my father Mangesh Kotnis and aunt Vatsala Kotnis were invited for the inauguration of Memorial Hall in Sichuan, 250 kilometers from Beijing, on the occasion of 34th death anniversary of Dr. Kotnis. My father was overwhelmed by the tributes paid by the highest authorities of the land to his dear younger brother Dwarka, and seeing the permanent exhibition raised to commemorate his name in the foreign country with so much respect for his service and with even greater love for his humanitarian qualities. On 9 December 1982, on the occasion of 40th death anniversary, I got the opportunity to visit China along with my mother Uma Kotnis and uncle Vitthal Kotnis. It was a grand function. Postal stamp and first day cover were released at that time. Dr. Kotnis is amongst the very few whose stamp is released by some other country. Then there was a premiere show of the movie on Dr. Kotnis in Chinese language. After the movie, we had dinner with the hero and the heroine of the movie. In December 2009, the Chinese people were asked to choose 10 best international friends of Chinese people from all over the world through internet. The name of Dr. Kotnis figured prominently as one of the 10 best international friends of China. My two aunts, Manorama Kotnis and Vatsala Kotnis, myself and my husband Dr. Rajan Borkar were invited on that occasion to receive the award. After the award function, we went to Dalian to meet Ko Ching Lan, who was very sick that time and hospitalized. She did not recognize us. It was very sad to see her in that condition. In September 2015, me and my husband were invited to China to attend a function held in Beijing to celebrate 70th anniversary of the victory of Chinese people's war of resistance against Japanese aggression. We got the opportunity to meet the President of China, Mr. Xi Jinping, and also stand with the presidents and prime ministers of other countries to watch the parade in Tiananmen Square. Ko Ching Lan visited India 3 to 4 times after the death of Ingwa. She stayed with the family. She was always friendly and jovial. She visited our children's school and sang Chinese songs for the school children. She visited our friends' houses and enjoyed the company. She was fitness fanatic and did morning exercises every day. She visited Sholapur and inaugurated the statue in front of Civil Hospital Sholapur. Mrs. Ko Ching Lan passed away on 29 June 2012 in Dalian in China at the age of 95 years. Indian government also showed gratitude towards Dr. Kotnis by releasing postal stamp and first day cover on 9 December 1993 on the 51st death anniversary. Memorial is built in Sholapur in the house of Kotnis family where Dwarkanath was born and brought up. On 1st January 2012, at the time of opening ceremony of the memorial, Manorama Kotnis, 91-year-old sister of Dr. Kotnis, handed over the handwritten condolence letter of Chairman Mao Zedong to the chief guest, Mr. Prithviraj Chavan, the then Chief Minister of Maharashtra, to keep in the memorial. In 2010, when Mrs. Pratibha Patil was the President of India, she had invited Dr. Vatsala Kotnis, the youngest sister of Dr. Dwarkanath, to accompany her during her visit to China. My father, Mangesh Kotnis, has written a book, Bridge Forever, on the life of Dr. Kotnis, which he later translated in Marathi as Samarpan. On the occasion of birth centenary of Dr. Kotnis, my aunt Vatsala had published a book of letters of Dr. Kotnis, Samarpanakade Vatsal. My father also has written a book, Life of Dr. Kotnis in Sangeet form, Katha Dwarka Nathachi, similar to Geet Ramayana. We had performed the Sangeet program of Katha Dwarka Nathachi on 10th October 2010 on his birth centenary, which was attended by Mr. Kiran Shantaram, Mr. Eknath Thakur, Chairman Saraswat Bank, and the Consul General of China.
So, Dr. Kotnis, therefore, is a symbol of friendship between the great Chinese and Indian nations and shining example of Indian people who are taking active part in our common struggle against the Japanese militarism and world fascism. His names will live in the hearts of two great nations to whom he dedicated his life, said Premier Chow En-lai, while paying tribute to Dr. Kotnis.
Dr. Kotnis is the everlasting bridge between India and China. Thank you everyone. Special thanks to Dia Foundation and Gayatri Parivar for giving us this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am and sir, for that extremely moving presentation. It wasn't just a narration of events, but we could feel the emotion that you must have gone through while making this presentation, because we could also at the same time feel. So Pandit Shriram Sharma Acharya ji, the founder of All World Gayatri Parivar, he gave a slogan that Manushya mein Devatva ka Uday. I think this is what Devatva ka Uday in Manushya means. When you selflessly go to another country and did what Dr. Kotnis did, it's a great heritage and legacy that all of us should preserve and learn from. And it's heartening to see that even amidst the tensions that India and China have had, something that has remained as a common thread of friendship is great people like Dr. Kotnis who can help bridge the gap. And as his biography in Marathi, it's appropriate word Samarpan, because that's what he was, Samarpit to humanity. So it was extremely enlightening, sir and ma'am. We have received some questions from the audience, and with your due permission, we would want to uh, put them to you and request you if you could answer those questions.
Yes.
So, I mean, we have just seen the presentation and the life events of Dr. Kotnis. So, how did it inspire you to do something that was modeled around his work, and what, because the work you have been doing is also great. What is your inspiration, and what is your experience about him, his teachings and his learnings, if and how has that inspired your work?
Yeah, it's only because in such a short while of 4 years, from 28 to 32, he made a name in the history of annals of India, and sacrificing his life to the cause of Chinese people, he made a remarkable name for himself. That is why we feel that the China, though, has been having a little difference of opinion. The times have changed, the values have changed, but we still feel that for our person, it was a great contribution to the cause of humanity, and it is ever to be cherished in the life. Thank you.
Correct. Though, in fact, just like the teachings of Gautam Buddha pervaded the boundaries of countries and
Yes.
went into different countries. I mean, similarly, the work that Dr. Kotnis did, and in such a short span of time, is in itself an example of how boundaries can be removed and humanity can be united. In that context, someone has asked the question that uh, how can Dr. Kotnis' story, this inspiring story, can be used to bridge the gap between India and China?
That's really true. I agree that this story should bridge the gap between India and China. But sorry to say that it hasn't happened that way. The
Right.
politics is different. The sacrifice of life is also a different thing. So, though we feel that China should have done a lot of favor, or maybe more looked at this thing with great appreciation, that really hasn't happened as yet.
Right.
So let's hope for the future. There is still hope, because in those days when Dr. Kotnis went there, China was a backward country,
Correct.
and now the China has become a superpower. And there is so much sea change in that their attitude, and they are self-sufficient with nuclear arsenals, and they have become a very strong power. So I don't know, but they should have uh, given due consideration. So that's it. Yeah.
And so, how do you? I mean, I'm sure you plan to take this legacy ahead. And how do we? I mean, in general public, those many of us are not even aware of the exact story of Dr. Kotnis, and many of us, before we saw this presentation, we were, or some of us were just aware on a very peripheral level. But what should be done to take this story or make this a household story and inspire people? And how do we take Dr. Kotnis on a larger level? And is there anything that the governments should do, state governments, government of India?
Yeah, they should have a proper exchange of ideas, sending doctors from this country to China, from Chinese people coming over in India to take the uh, newer ideas. If there are better programs, then there will be a very good relation between India and China. So that's what should work.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. What would be your message to young doctors? Because you are doing selfless work, taking his legacy forward. What is your message to young doctors?
Now the life has changed, because the doctors have now been, I'm sorry to say, are so much into the monetary benefits of being a doctor.
Correct.
But that should not be there. That is what is the example of Dr. Kotnis, that it was beyond the boundary, that he worked, and then he did not expect anything in return. He walked on the mules, he rided the mules, and then he was uh, very much into the sacrifice
Correct.
of his health was deteriorated, but he didn't care for that and continued to work. But such things are rare to happen. Maybe once in a lifetime or once in a century, or such doctors are born, and they give themselves completely to the cause of well-being of the other nation. I think they come from top.
Amen.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So, I mean, it's been a great learning for all of us. And as you may be aware that the Gayatri Parivar has a university at Haridwar called Dev Sanskriti Vishwavidyalaya that is confluencing ancient Indian wisdom and combining it with modern day science. So it would be great if you could take some time out of your busy lives and
Yes, sir.
visit Dev Sanskriti Vishwavidyalaya and the headquarters Shanti Kunj, which is celebrating its 50th year this year, so that it will further converge into great ideas that we could use to take Dr. Kotnis's legacy forward and inspire young doctors to, as you rightly said, not just doctors, other youngsters, young people who are associated with DIA or with other organizations to take up something without a monetary frame of mind. So I would request whenever you have time, please do visit Shanti Kunj and Dev Sanskriti Vishwavidyalaya. And
Yes. Thank you.
thank you once again for
Thank
joining
you.
today. And I thank our audience also for joining this very special session today. And I would like to inform you that on the next Sunday, we are going to have with us Miss Anna Verwall, who is an international maternal child health nurse, a pre and prenatal educator, an international lecturer and workshop facilitator. She's a TEDx speaker from Womb to World, and she's going to talk about uh, how do we take care of children uh, during pregnancy, pre-pregnancy, at the time of. It's a very interesting topic, and it has its genesis in our culture also because we celebrate Garb Sanskar, so it has scientific basis. So that's the first time the Gyan Sabha platform will be going international. So I request you to please join us on the next Sunday at 4:30
Okay.
p.m. as well. I request all of you to please join. And thank you once again. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us
Thank
today.
you.
Thank you.
It was an enriching journey. Thank you. Thank you, sir.